It's no secret that people like to comparison shop. It's just kind of in our nature. We like to look at something that we're thinking about buying and then look at other things that are close in price or close in feature and decide which of the two is better and then make our purchasing decision. That's just not an odd thing for human beings to do. And so we don't get the opportunity as much as we would like to be able to do comparison videos because they take a lot of time and you gotta have both devices around. But right now, we've got a lot of devices in the office and we wanna do some of those comparisons. And right up there at the top of our list of comparison videos to do is this one with the Pixelbook and the Pixel Slate, because there's a lot of stuff they share in common, specifically Google's DNA in them, but there's a lot of things that are different about them. And so I know, because we get emails a lot and comments, that a lot of people are trying to decide, if I'm gonna spend some money to get a premium Chromebook, do I go with this one or do I go with this one? And so we want to kind of help you out with that. But before we get into comparing Chromebooks, there's one thing we can definitely say. You probably don't need to compare VPN services if you're looking to browse the internet securely. NordVPN is the VPN that we all use. It works on Chromebooks and iOS devices and Android devices alike. It is by far, in our opinion, the best one you can get. So if you'd like to learn more about them, go to chromeunboxed.com/NordVPN and you can get started today. So a bit about these comparison videos and how we're going to do these as we move forward. We're going to talk about 5 things, and in general, they'll mirror the way that we review devices too. So we're going to talk about build quality, we're going to talk about screens, we're going to talk about keyboard, trackpad, you know, your input type stuff, and then we're going to talk about kind of like internals, ports and all that stuff, speakers, battery, all that stuff together. And then the 5th thing, the one that's going to be a little bit more subjective than those first 4, is just going to be the overall feel of using the device on a daily basis. And so we don't want to do comparison videos about devices we don't ever use. We're going to do them about devices that we've spent some time with and have just basically formed an opinion on. So just because something wins on a spec sheet doesn't really always mean it's the best overall device. And so we want to throw that 5th category in there so that after we kind of tally up and say which one wins each of them, we can at the end of it say, at least subjectively to a point, that this is the one I would choose if I was going to buy one of these 2 devices today. And so hopefully that can help you out a little bit. All right, so let's start with build quality and we'll talk about the Pixelbook first. Overall, I really can't ask for too much more with the Pixelbook. It is built just almost perfectly. There are some little things that I don't like about it, but honestly, those come down to stuff that we're going to talk about in a minute. It's just aluminum and glass and it feels great and it's super thin and it's super light, and even a year and a half after it's been put out, there's nothing else that looks like it. And when it's sitting on the desk, it just looks modern and awesome. And there's very little to rag on with the Pixelbook, but there is one thing, and that is the palm rests and the feet on the bottom. They discolor. There's no way around it. We've had 3 of them in the office and all of them are discolored, and I don't know how to fix it, but it's just kind of annoying, and it's a bit of a scar on an otherwise just absolutely beautiful and well-made device. Now, over on the Pixel Slate, you get superior build quality as well. I mean, these are both made by Google devices, and so we expect that. You know, metal, glass, rounded edges, it feels great in your hand. It's perfectly balanced on one finger. You know, there's just a lot of good stuff going on with this tablet, and it looks great on a desk and it looks great in your hands and all that kind of stuff. The one knock I have with the Pixel Slate is, well, one, it picks up fingerprints like a monster. I don't know that you can put that as a knock necessarily against build quality. It doesn't mean it's poor quality, it just picks up fingerprints like crazy. But the keyboard has to be talked about when we talk about the Slate, especially when we're talking about it against the Pixelbook. So the Pixelbook has a keyboard, so we got to talk about what the keyboard looks like on the Slate. And in general, like, I like the keys on it, and we're going to talk more about that in a second. But when we talk about build quality, this thing feels a little flimsy. And I talked about that in the review. Whenever you set it on your lap, it can kind of just wobble around a lot. It doesn't really firmly go into place, and it's just not as high of a quality as the tablet it's attached to. And so when we start talking about which one is built better, they're both great, don't get me wrong, but overall package, keyboard and screen included, the win has to go to the Pixelbook. I feel like, especially at a year and a half out, for it to still feel as well engineered as it did the day I got it out of the box, the winner has to be the Pixelbook. All right, so let's move on to screen, and we'll kind of swap this up each time. So we'll start with the Pixel Slate. The Pixel Slate comes in at 3000 by 2000 resolution, is nice and bright, IPS, punchy colors, wide viewing angles, 3:2 aspect ratio, 12.3 inches. It's a great screen. I mean, things look really, really good on it. Google even went as far to brand it as a molecular display, and so it apparently like fires electrons a little bit faster so that the refresh rate on it looks better to your eyes. And I just have to say, the screen on it's incredible. Like, I have no knocks whatsoever with the Pixel Slate screen. It's one of my favorite parts of the device. Moving on to the Pixelbook, it has an equally impressive display. It's 12.3 inches, 3:2 ratio. Less pixels here, so 2400 by 1600 on the pixel count. But ultimately, when you're looking at these devices from any kind of regular point of view, like without a microscope basically, you're not going to notice the difference in pixel density, so that doesn't really matter. Pixelbook is a tad bit brighter than the Pixel Slate, and I would say the colors are right on par. There's some times when the Pixelbook can be a little washed out in its colors, so I think when we look at them side by side, especially when we start talking about bezels, like the Pixelbook has some pretty chunky bezels on it, and turns some people off, and the Pixel Slate reduced those a little bit. When we look at these screens side by side and we just look at the stats, the Pixel Slate wins, but also when I just look at the devices too, like there's just something about the Pixel Slate's display overall that draws me to it. And watching movies and videos and stuff like that on it, the win in this department I feel like has to go to the Pixel Slate. All right, next up is keyboard and trackpad. So the basic way that you're going to interact with your device. Sure, they both have touchscreens, but in general, they're Chromebooks, so we're going to get productive on these things. So keyboard and trackpad really, really matter. Let's start with the Pixelbook. If you've watched any of my videos, you probably know that it's my favorite keyboard of all time. I love it. I love it to this day. Every time I review any other device or work from any other device, I go back to it and it just feels like home a little bit to me. And part of that's just because I've used it a lot, but part of it is because it is excellent. And even when we talked with the folks at Bridge and they were talking about keyboards and keyframes, they went on and on about how good the keyframe is in the Pixelbook. And I just think that they nailed it. They did something here that is fantastic, and it's well built. It stood up to the test of time. I don't have missed keystrokes. It just feels great. It works great. I love every bit of it. Trackpad is equally as good. It's glass. The click mechanism feels perfect. It may be a little bit loud for some people, the click, but other than that, I mean, input methods on this thing are absolutely top notch. So when we talk about the keyboard and trackpad on the Pixel Slate, it's a little bit of a different scenario here because this is built as a tablet with a detachable keyboard. It's a tablet first, and it's a clamshell / keyboard toting laptop type thing second. And so you kind of feel that. It's not that the keyboard is bad, it's pretty good. And to be as thin as it is, the keyframe feels really good. And the halo effect on the round keys, like that doesn't bother me at all. I actually type from a different keyboard that has round keys. And I don't know if it actually lives up to Google's spec that it helps you make less errors, but all that stuff feels great. And the travel is surprisingly good. Just that the clickiness on the Pixel Slate's keyboard isn't as good as the Pixelbook, and that honestly shouldn't be that much of a surprise to anyone. The whole thing is a little bit flimsy in general, and we talked about that in the build, and so that kind of reflects, it's a great trackpad, and all of this feels really good actually when it's on a desk. It's the minute you move it to any other surface, you start losing some of the clickability of the trackpad, the keys start feeling a little bit less clicky, and just overall the experience kind of goes downhill. But we have to talk about this device too, because this is actually an additional device that you can get, the Bridge G-Type keyboard that's made specifically for the Pixel Slate, and it is a Bluetooth driven keyboard, but it's backlit. The keyframe feels really, really good, and it's aluminum, so it's gonna give you the stability whenever you're on your lap or on an uneven surface that you're not gonna get from this keyboard. It's actually a little bit cheaper than Google's keyboard, so there is some selection to be had with the Pixel Slate, which is pretty cool. And who knows, down the road, there could be another company that comes and makes another keyboard. So you could choose a keyboard that works for you, but it doesn't even matter for me personally, because at the end of the day, trackpads are pretty equal, keyboards are not. This thing has the best keyboard I've used, hands down, across any device. And so you can have 3 or 4 keyboards over here. They don't add up to how good the one is on the Pixelbook. So for me, in this category, I have to give the win to the Pixelbook. So for our fourth section, we're going to talk about internals, and that includes stuff like speakers and ports and processors and all that kind of stuff. So there's a few places where both devices, the Pixelbook and Pixel Slate, kind of line up, and it's just a push. And so let's talk about those real quick. Performance in general, day to day, is going to be about the same between the devices if you've bought the similar specs. Now, you can buy some lower spec versions of the Pixel Slate, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend those, but when we line them up to each other and say, you know, Core i5 on both devices, 8 gigs of RAM on both, you're not going to notice a whole lot of difference in performance day to day. The internal storage is about the same on both of them, depending on the configuration you buy. So all that stuff feels like just kind of a push. So let's move on past that and talk about, well, ports. Oh yeah, that's a push too, because they both have 2 USB Type-Cs and oh, wait a second. This one has a headphone jack and that one doesn't. So this has become one of those devices that decided to get rid of a headphone jack for no good reason. So that's a bit of a knock on the Pixel Slate for me, but they do include the little dongle that they do with the Pixel 3 and they did with the Pixel 2 as well. So you at least have an option to get headphones out. In general, because the speakers sound so good, I've never found myself wanting to do that anyway. But then we got to talk about those speakers. The speakers on the Pixelbook sound okay. They get by and they kind of come up through the keyboard, and you know, they'll let you hear the audio on the screen that you need to kind of see to take in a video or something like that. The speakers on the Pixel Slate are phenomenal. They're the best speakers on a light portable device I've ever heard, and I've actually watched full-length movies on it. I've watched full-length shows, and every time I get this device back out and start to watch a video, I just kind of sit back and go, ah, man, such great speakers. I really, really love them. They're wide enough to provide stereo separation, and they're just awesome. They just increase the likability of this device so much that even the stuff I've knocked on it, it makes me want to use it just because the speakers are so good. And right up above them is a fingerprint scanner, and that sounds like a little thing, but there are no other Chromebooks with it, and it just makes walking up and logging in with one touch such a nice addition to the overall experience. And so when we start talking about internals, if we include all of that stuff, because it's basically a push from performance, so the Pixel Slate has to win this category because the speakers and the fingerprint scanner just really put it over the top. So let's move on to the fifth thing, and that's just kind of this aesthetics and feel. Like, how does it feel to use the device? Well, both of these are premium, and it feels great to use both of them, to be honest with you. Like, neither one is a terrible experience, and so I really kind of have to back up and go, which one do I just feel most confident in picking up? So if I've got to get something done, I've got to take care of a job, or whatever the case may be, which one am I going to go grab first when push comes to shove? And for me, that's the Pixelbook. Just in general, because if I've grabbed this one and it's got the soft case on it, I don't like the way it wiggles around. I don't like not knowing where I'm going to be set up to work. If I have to work out of my lap, I really don't like using it. I don't have to think about any of that stuff with the Pixelbook. And with the Pixelbook, if I need to hold it as a tablet and take notes or write or something like that, well, I just flip it into convertible mode and use it that way for a little bit. And so overall, in general, when it comes to just aesthetics, when it comes to just using the device on a day-to-day basis, the best overall device for me would be the Pixelbook. So if you've been keeping score as we wrap up, you can see the writing on the wall. The Pixelbook has 3 and the Pixel Slate has 2, and that's kind of indicative of the way I feel about these two devices. They're really close in a lot of ways, but they're just kind of different. If you're looking for a clamshell device, then clearly the Pixelbook is the way to go. And if you're looking for a tablet first, clearly the Pixel Slate's the way to go. But if I'm forced to put them against each other and I'm forced to choose one to work from, for it to be my only device and to be the one I'm going to spend my money on and use on a daily basis, for me, there's just no question. Overall, the holistic experience of using the Pixelbook is just a better one at this point than the Pixel Slate. And again, it is not to say that the Pixel Slate's a terrible device. It's gotten some rough reviews out there. I still enjoy using it. It's just when I'm forced, again, to put them side by side, I have to go with the Pixelbook, and it is our winner in this versus video. And so, guys, that's it for this one. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button down below, and until next time, we'll see you.